welcome to Mental Skills. What were we talking about last week?
Excited to be here.
Emotional control.
Emotional control. Can anyone give me a definition of emotional control without saying the words controlling your emotions?
Not having the ability to not show your emotions or show them if you want.
Not having the ability.
You start off very well. So having the ability to. Right, I like that. Can anyone be a little bit more concise? Yep.
To not let your emotions affect you and your actions.
Good. So having the ability for your emotions not to affect your actions. Right? Being in control of the way you react to your emotions. We're obviously not saying that you can't be emotional, you can't have emotions, because I think that's unfair and it's unrealistic. So, we're going to talk about something today. These things all kind of interlink. Confidence. What is confidence? Yeah, Lucia.
It's how much you believe in yourself.
How much you believe in yourself. Good. Anyone want to take it one stage further and be a little bit more specific? Yes.
Believing in yourself.
Okay. So, the two of you both said the same thing, but it is true. Right. Ladies, want to add anything to what you think confidence is, or the definition is?
Not just believing in yourself, but like believing that you're gonna do good. Because like you could believe in yourself and be like, I believe that I'm gonna suck at tennis.
That's
And then, like,
that's the same thing.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
like,
not actually too far off the truth, right? Being confident is the belief, listen up, gents. The belief in your abilities to succeed. So there's the positive part, right? So having confidence is your belief in your ability to succeed. Why is confidence important in tennis?
Because the more confident you are, like, basically the better and like more naturally you'll play. If you're not confident, you'll get tight. You won't make the right shot selection, and you'll overall just play worse.
So that's very good. It affects directly the way that you can compete. It affects your level of mistakes. It affects everything about the way you play. Yes, Dennis?
Not being confident leads to like not caring, and then you just don't turn out to be a good player in the end.
Okay. That's a really good point. Hold on to that thought, because we're going to get there in a second, right? But more along the lines of how it affects your performance directly, right? You see players that at least look confident tend to go out there and do things well and play better, right? If you have low confidence, it's tied to poor performances. So Dennis brought up a good point, and we're actually now going to talk about different characteristics. What are some of the characteristics of those players, tennis players specifically, that are high in confidence?
Like overly high or high?
Say again?
Like overly high players or
No,
normally high?
just good players either on a professional level, on a junior level. What are the characteristics of those players that have high confidence?
Instead of when they're in like a high pressure situation where maybe it's match point from the other player, instead of getting tight and like bringing their game down, they kind of like break their game turns up instead.
Okay, so their play is not affected negatively in intense situations. I agree with that, right? So you can play, no matter what the situation, you can play relaxed, aggressive tennis. What's another characteristic of high confidence? Because that's a big one, being able to play the same even in tight situations. But what are some of the other things? If you're confident, are you enjoying your tennis a lot of the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So when you enjoy, think about it this way: when you are enjoying your tennis, what might that affect?
How you play.
How you play? Yeah, sure. Right. So you hopefully if you're enjoying it and you're confident, you'll play well. But don't just think about the outcome. Playing well is an outcome. Think about some of the things that you have to put in to play well. If you're feeling confident, what might also you be doing?
Controlling your emotions.
Controlling your emotions, good, right? What else?
Putting in lots of effort to succeed.
Say again?
Putting in lots of effort to succeed.
So just the opposite of what you said about how when you have low confidence, when you have high confidence, putting in a lot of effort. Right? When you're confident, you want to go out there and work hard. You want to put the effort in to succeed. What's another thing that you need that's not necessarily effort, but what else do you need to be able to do in order to win matches or increase your level of tennis? We talk about it all the time. It's one of the whole major reasons why we're sitting in a mental skills class.
You need mental skills.
You definitely need mental skills,
Tennis best
but specifically, begins with F, rhymes with hocus pocus.
Focus, focus.
Focus.
Good job, guys. Focus.
Focus,
I was
focus.
gonna say that, and then like I didn't think I was right.
So, you should have a little bit more confidence in your
Yes.
ability to answer the question.
Amazing.
See how that tied in so nicely?
Yeah.
So nicely.
I
What
totally
else?
don't think that's
What else is a sign of a confident player?
They're taking risks.
So they're taking risks, but they're taking, maybe calculated risks, but they're
Yeah, but
willing
like
to
they're not just like lobbing it back over and being scared.
they're not playing tentatively, right? They're playing aggressively and they're willing to take risks. I like that.
They're not flashing their racket.
Okay, so they're not displaying the anger, they're controlling the emotions like you said earlier on, right? Something that Jordan said I happen to like a lot. You play to win, not to avoid losing. When you're confident, you're going out there and you're going to try and win, right? You're not trying to avoid defeat by just pushing the ball back and hoping your opponent misses. Right? One of the other things that ties into level of confidence is how much commitment you have. When times are tough, if you're confident, you don't give up. There's no giving up on the situation. Right? The other flip side, which we're going to get into now, is there's very little effort, and it's easy just to give up. You're losing, you're not confident, so you stop trying. What are some of the characteristics, do you think, of someone that has low confidence? Something different from maybe what we've been talking about, Lucian.
Thank you.
So tanking.
Sure.
So tanking. For those of you that don't know what tanking is in terms of tennis, it means literally giving up and not trying. Sometimes tanking is as a result of being angry.
Or intentionally losing.
It's intentionally losing. Tanking is intentionally losing. Sometimes it's a sign of something bigger, where you're not confident, therefore you're quite frankly, you're not ready for a fight. You're not ready to try and compete. So the easy option is just to give up.
A non-confident person chucks his racket across the court.
Okay. Again, so there are themes that are coming up, right? But the less confidence you have, the more likely you are to react negatively on the court. Displaying poor emotions. Yeah.
They'll take like really stupid, really bad, uncalculated risks.
Okay.
Like just like
So they won't make smart decisions. It's
Yeah.
linked to focus, or a lack of focus, and a lack of attention to detail, right? So yeah, you might take higher risks, but not because,
smart risks.
but it's through not being smart or not being focused on the task at hand.
I think normally they don't take more risks, they take less risks, and they're normally like the pusher type of
Well, if
player.
they get pissed off, they'll just.
I tend to agree with Jordan that the general characteristic, right, is that people, when they're not confident, then they don't go for as much. But when we say risks, we're talking here about, just not focusing and hitting. So a lack of smart tennis. Let's just put it that way. I think that's what you were trying to say, right? So a lack of smart tennis because you're not focused, because you're not really engaged, right? And the alternative again is getting very tense and tight and pushing the ball back. Right? But it happens to everyone at all different levels. Even at the professional level, you see when the pros get tense and they lose confidence. There have been quite a few times, quite frankly, where players lose confidence on a serve or a particular shot and they just can't make it anymore. They just cannot make that shot. I was watching a match recently, I can't remember who it was. It's one of the top pros on the men's side, not the top 5, but it was in the ATP Tour Cup.
Curious?
No, it wasn't Curious. They were playing in the ATP Tour Cup. No, you know what? It was Pablo Cuevas. Anyone know who that is?
Yeah, it's the guy who hits shots between his legs.
He does hit shots between his legs. Pablo Cuevas is from Uruguay, and he was playing against Gabashvili, or whatever his name might be. So it was in the ATP Tour Cup, good level of competition, and literally in the middle of the second set, Pablo Cuevas forgot how to hit forehands. He just could not, his backhand was really good, but he could not make a forehand. So,
Happens all the time.
it does, and it happens to anyone at any particular time. So what we're going to do is when we finish talking about these characteristics, we're going to watch a little bit of a video talking in general about confidence and how it affects not just the pros, but all tennis players. Before we get there though, there's a couple more things. What else? Let's think a little bit outside the box. Let's think about some of the things we haven't already talked about. What are some of the other things that can really show themselves when someone has low confidence?
Well, they start playing better. They kind of like, I don't know, they feel more like at home on the tennis court because they're not like.
We're talking about low confidence now, not high confidence.
Oh, low confidence.
Low confidence.
Oh.
We're still on low confidence, right?
They just play horribly.
Okay, so they just
Don't
play
feel
horribly.
at home.
How about, have you ever seen this before? Players that play really well in practice, but
Yeah.
can't play well in matches?
Oh, confidence.
Hey.
So there's a few people in this room that feel that way. Right? That can be a confidence issue. A, maybe you haven't won a lot of matches yet, or you haven't played a lot recently. Right? And then you start double thinking, start overthinking. That's another thing. What is another way of saying overthinking? Has anyone ever heard of a phrase that relates to overthinking?
Well, thinking too much.
Overheaded.
Okay.
Second guessing.
Second guessing. Good. Has anyone ever heard of paralysis by analysis?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Never in my life.
Say again?
Never in
Yes.
my life.
Okay, so some of you haven't. But it's very apt in this situation because when you overthink, sometimes that leads to hesitation. It leads to you stop hitting the ball. Right? And it's not literal paralysis where you can't move, but it has an effect on the way that you hit the ball and the way that you can move on the court. All right. So without further ado. So based upon that video we just saw about confidence, right? What did you guys take about any of those specific players or past players about what confidence means to them? Did anything jump out at you?
That it took like a lot of work and a lot of like being prepared made them like confident and
So a lot of effort, a lot of time, and Melise at the beginning, Javier Melise, was talking about the preparation that goes into being confident. If you're not prepared when you get to a tournament, how can you expect to go out there, win, and be confident with what you're doing? Yeah.
I know they all said like there are other ways to gain confidence and win, but before they were asked that question, it seemed like the main thing they were talking about is they gain confidence from winning matches.
except for
I think that's why she asked different questions, because I think the initial response was, yeah, of course. Because don't forget, these guys, you know, throughout their career when they were juniors, they were top of the national ranking. So they did win a lot early on. And obviously, when you get into a habit of winning, it helps. But what I did think was interesting is that, to your point, then she said, okay, what else is there, right? And the theme that kept coming up, aside from winning, which again is important, but it's not the be all and end all. You can build confidence in your ability to play without necessarily winning all the matches, but hard work, perseverance, putting the time in, right? Preparation. Some of the people, and again, by you guys sitting in the room now, you're here, right? You're here because for one reason or another, you, or maybe your parents as well, decided that you could benefit from mental skills training. That puts you ahead of others that maybe think that they don't need it or they don't have time for it. Okay? Because whether you like it or not, tennis, sports in general, but especially a sport like tennis, is such a mental game, and there are things that you're still learning and that you still will develop in terms of the mental game. Building the confidence is such an important part, and it can be so delicate. Because if you're playing the wrong level of tournament, or if you're not ready to compete, and you keep losing and losing and losing and losing, of course that's going to affect your confidence. Right? But we've got to do a good job of finding a balance between winning matches and also doing well in practice. Right? They were talking about, one of the guys was specifically talking about, I think it was Magnus Larsson said, yeah, winning's important, but even if you've lost a match, what are the positives that you can take from that? What are some of the things that you've done well that you weren't doing as well in the past? Does anyone know, can anyone remember when Pete Sampras said he was finally confident on the tour? How old he was? 20. That's young by today's standards. At the time, however, most tennis players were retiring by their late 20s, not playing some of their best tennis in their 30s, right, which they are now. Huh? Mid to late 30s, right? Federer's a year younger than me, and he plays not quite as well as he did in his prime, but pretty good. So the point being is that at the time, 20 years old was not particularly young. Boris Becker won his first Grand Slam when he was 17 years old.
But when would they start?
Huh?
When would they start?
16.
Well, yeah, they can
17.
still do that.
They can still do
Actually,
that,
soccer players
but it
start at
takes them.
16.
But it takes the tennis players now. If you notice, it takes them a little bit longer to get there because of the physicality of the game has changed. On the female side too, there were women that were winning Grand Slams at age 14.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How?
Because the game wasn't as physical or as strong.
How can a 14-year-old beat a 20-year-old who has...
Happened. It absolutely happened. How old, does anyone know Martina Hingis, how old she was? Was she 14 or 15 when she won her Grand Slam?
13.
I think it was 13, 15 maybe. So, long story short is, the good news for us is everyone's getting a little bit older when they play well. So you guys still have time. Pete Sampras said he wasn't fully confident until he was 20 years old. That's weird because he won the US Open when he was 19. So he'd already won a Grand Slam, and he said he didn't feel completely confident yet. This is one of the greatest players of all time on the men's side. Okay? So we talk about that video saying winning helps. But what are some of the other things you can do to increase confidence? This is probably the most important thing we're going to talk about today, guys. What can you do right now in the next practice, in your next match? What can you do?
Focus on like the positives of what you did and
Okay.
think about what you improved on.
So think about the positives from any given situation, right?
Work harder.
Practice, practice, practice. Work hard, do your best. Great, they come up in the video. What are some of the other things though? Don't even think about the video right now. What are some of the things that you think could help you today? Do you ever look at other people in your groups, or do you ever look at professionals and try and see how they succeed? Right? Don't even think about it just for tennis now. Think about having maybe role models in other aspects, right? A few of you in this room follow soccer, right? There are guys that you like playing soccer. One of the main ways you get better is by trying to replicate some of the things that the good players do. Right? So maybe looking at others to give you guidance. Look at their success and how they achieve it. What else do you think could help build confidence?
Like better emotional control. Like if you like get to your confidence as much. Like
Okay.
you might go into a match pretty confident, and then like you get pretty emotional, and then you lose your confidence and just sort of.
So perhaps working on your arsenal, no pun intended, like your arsenal of mental skills, like the things that you have. Yes, and Arsenal is my team. Yeah, it's very good.
Stones.
But having a bunch of weapons that you can call upon to help you have more success. Ladies, anything that you do back there that might help your confidence, do you think?
When I watch tennis and I see them serve, I usually try to replicate the serve in my first serve, and if I don't make it, I just do an easy second serve.
That's great, right? So you're looking at video, you're looking at, tennis on the TV, trying to emulate the people that have already had great success with it. That works for a lot of people, that's great. What about having a good team around you? Right? You always hear the top players talk about their team and thanking their team. What kind of team do you need around you?
Like a supportive team, like if you lose, they'll tell you that like it's fine, you should just keep working harder and just like, I don't know.
Finding a supportive team, so making sure that your parents are supportive, that the coaches you're working with are always encouraging you, right? And this is an important one. Your friends, your peers.
I played on JV for my high school team.
Yeah.
And a lot of the girls were older than me and better than me at tennis, but like they still helped me, like, and it made me a better player.
That's
towards
awesome.
The better, play with better players.
So your teammates on JV supported you, encouraged you, and made you a better player, right? It's very, very important that I know some of you guys in the groups that I work with, you give each other, you have a little banter with each other backwards and forwards, but generally speaking, I think most of the people in the group support each other, right? And if you're friends with anyone that doesn't support you in terms of what you're trying to achieve in tennis, maybe spend a little less time with them, right? Surround yourself with people that are going to be positive, that are going to help you build your confidence, that are going to help you achieve the things you want to achieve. So, one last thing I want to talk about is the issue of overconfidence. Is there such a thing as being overconfident?
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree upon that. What does it mean to be overconfident?
Being like, I'm gonna win every single match.
Okay, like I'm going to win every single match no matter what.
Sometimes it's like being self-absorbed.
Self-absorbed. I'm too good for this. I'm too good for this practice. No one else is good enough to play with me. I see that all the time, right? Luckily for us, I don't think anyone sitting in this room is too overconfident. Yeah.
Like thinking that like there's no way for you to really get better, and that you're just like the best.
Resistant to improvement, or resistant to the coaches trying to give you advice. Again, none of you guys suffer from that. Some of the older kids that I work with sometimes think they already know, which being that overconfident can lead to some issues. Right? But being overconfident means sometimes you don't work as hard as you need to. If you are overconfident, I think that means that sometimes you have a very unrealistic understanding of your level of tennis. Sometimes when you have no confidence, you also have a poor understanding of your level because you're actually better than you give yourself credit for. So it's important to try and find a balance of being confident enough, but not being too cocky or too arrogant or too overconfident. All right? The one symptom of being too overconfident, and sometimes we're all guilty of this, is if we look at a tournament draw and go, oh, that's too easy. I'm going to beat that person easily. Right? The only time you can say it was an easy match is after you've won it. Right? Do not underestimate your opponent ever. If you win easily, great. Congratulations. All right? So we want to keep working on building our confidence, surrounding ourselves with good people, but obviously finding a balance to the point where we don't become too overconfident. Anyone have any questions? Feel free to hold on to the sheets if if you would like to review them at a later date. And aside from that, please put everything back where it needs to be.